We're going to say that it's 5:10 and we're going to call the meeting to order. Can I have a roll call?
Sure. Nelson.
Here.
Shuda.
Here.
Data.
I'm here.
Bergstrom.
Here.
Beshin.
Here.
Kaplan.
Here.
And Severson. Thank you.
Here. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, I need a motion to adopt or amend the agenda.
So Stata moves to adopt the agenda as presented.
Can I have a second?
Second. Here we go.
Thank you, Carlene. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Number 4 is community input. So if there's anybody on the call, we allow 15 minutes total with a limit of 3 minutes per speaker. If anyone wants to say anything. Going once, going twice. Okay. Then I need a motion to approve or amend the minutes from November 10th.
Stata will move to adopt approve the minutes.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Carrie.
All in favor of approval say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. Next is review and payment of, I need a motion for review and payment of bills and review and accept financial reports.
So moved.
Thank you, Carlene. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Kaplan.
Awesome. Jennifer, what do you want to tell us about?
The Stafford Rosenbaum is for legal fees for the contract negotiation to get the contract with the architects ready to go for once the site is selected. So just want to bring that to your attention. We do have a one-time fee for setup under South Central Library System. The library does now have a mobile app, and we chose to customize the app so it has information specific to Oregon. So you'll see that here. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Anybody have questions or comments? Okay. Anything on the financial report you want to? There you go. Okay.
No, again, we're either pretty much on track or the few accounts we're not on track for are just weird, like the revenue accounts because of the pandemic. So they're kind of as to be expected, even though they're not on track where we would like them to be. Also should point out that impact fee revenue for this year is much higher than we were anticipating, and those funds are available for capital purposes.
Yay.
But I'm trying to find that, and of course I'm not able to do that at the moment. Oh yeah, so that year-to-date actual for that is significantly higher than that was budgeted for as well. That's all I want to point out with those. Kind of end of the year, we're trying to spend as much, as responsible from each account without going over. So.
Anybody have questions, clarifications on anything? Okay.
Can you just say a little bit more about the impact fund fee, since I don't really understand that, please?
Yeah, so impact fees are fees collected by developers when new property is developed.
Okay, right.
And there's fees for specific purposes like their parks. And so
I get that part.
Okay.
I get that part.
Okay.
I thought it was a library specific impact fee. So, okay.
It is.
Thank
it
you.
is. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
But it's not something you collect. It's something they collect and you get.
Correct. Correct.
Right.
Yep.
That's,
yep.
Okay. That part I get. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry. Until I'm a little bit off today, I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay, so all in favor of paying bills and accepting the financial reports, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Informational items, committee reports.
We have not had any committees meet, so we can skip that today.
Awesome. Library director report.
So a couple things. We have a number of employees that celebrating milestones this year, and usually those are recognized by the village at a special get together, which was skipped again this year because of COVID. So wanted to take a few minutes to recognize Alicia Fisher for reaching 15 years, and she's on the call today. So congratulations, Alicia. We appreciate you.
Yes.
And then we have Matt Lamb, who reached 5 years as a reference assistant, and Dan Belzak, who's been with us for 5 years. He is now substituting, so he's not working as many hours as he had been, but he's still a part of our team. So we appreciate Matt and Dan as well. OCA Media recently invited us for an interview on the new library, and so that was featured on November 17th. So you can click on the link to watch that if you haven't had a chance. They're resuming that program with Tom Kurtsdorfer as the host. The village also recently approved their budget on November 15th. So we'll be talking about that a little later in the agenda. Also want to recognize our staff members, Laura and Sarah, who took the pottery that community member Mitch Sigmund and his family donated. And they did an online auction, and we were able to raise just over $1,600 in pottery with what was left from the sale that we had last year. So very, very nice way to get that back in the hands of community members and make a difference for the new library, thanks to their work and Mitch's generosity. Our staff also recently completed inventory, which it was the first time we had been able to do that in 6 years. So we're hoping moving forward to get on a rotating schedule to do that so that we can break it into smaller pieces. Really wanted to get that kind of done before we move to the new library to make sure the collection is accurately reflecting what we have available. Our management team also had the opportunity to participate in the Library Journal workshop, which is multiple weeks on fostering an anti-racist library. So 4 of our management team members have been able to complete that so far. So that's been a great opportunity, and it is available for them to refer back to. So, you know, some of that information has been helping with us revising some of our policies, which is coming through in future agendas. So that's a great opportunity, and it was available through no cost to us through our South Central Library System grant. And then just drawing attention to some special hours we have for the holidays. With the way the holidays fall this year, we're closed a little bit more than we typically would be, just because the village recognizes those holidays during the week, and we're typically open Saturdays, and so we're closed the Saturday as well, which is kind of a bonus close day for our staff, but means a little bit extra closure for patrons, unfortunately. So you also have our December program schedule. We have a little bit fewer programs in December this year than we would in a normal year, but you still do see some things on the calendar. So I just want to draw that to your attention as well.
Thank you. Next, communications.
So we did receive a couple pieces of information since the joint meeting on Monday. So I just wanted to make sure you saw those. So there's a letter in your packet that you received, and then also I think now we're up to 3 submissions on the feedback form that are included in your packet as well. So wanted to make sure that you had those available. There's 1, 2 from Heather, and then the 3rd from Mary. So those 4 were what we've added since Monday. So.
So then village board announcements. Nothing.
Well, I think you were at the, I was gone because of Rick's surgery for the November meeting when the budget was approved. And then you were at the last meeting. So I don't think I have anything to report that you don't know about.
Some school districts.
All kinds of good things, but I think one thing that's particularly relevant here is we have purchased a collection of drawings from a local artist, Desiree Mayo, and the drawings are for our library, and they're featuring important historical figures from many ethnic backgrounds and racial and ethnic backgrounds, and it's she's an amazing artist, and it'll be really wonderful to feature her work and the important subjects of her work in our K-6 libraries across the school district.
Very cool. Thank you. Okay. Discussion and possible action items. A is joint meeting outcomes and next steps for new library project.
So I just wanted to take a quick minute to recap, kind of summarize what the outcomes were from Monday's meeting. And I really appreciate all the time and care that our board and the village board members, I know Mike's here and I know others are probably going to be listening in, took into having the conversation about the best location for the library. I know people care very passionately about it, and I appreciate all the perspectives and thought that everybody put into having that conversation. So the outcomes, as I understand them from the meeting, are that 249 North Main was removed as consideration for the site for the new library. We do still have that memorandum of understanding that still needs to be amended. So that'll be something that we'll anticipate doing in the future, perhaps once a new location has been determined. The village did request soil borings that be done on 2 locations on the Alpine Parkway property that they own, including the former school site. Jeff Rao from the Public Works Department was able to work with us yesterday and today, and he actually sent out that proposal for those services to 4 different companies to try to expedite that process and get those back, in a reasonable time period. And then we already do have that soil information for the Brook Street property available and ready for village board information. And then the village board also asked for some preliminary site layouts and cost projections for site specific costs for both the former school site property and the current library block at Brook Street. So we had a meeting earlier this afternoon with a number of our staff and consultants to try to begin the process of getting that information together in a thoughtful way for the village board to address those questions and those specific points. We also invited Rachel from the senior center because the senior center would be impacted by that, the Brook Street choice, to make sure we're engaging her in that process. So we'll be working on that and hopefully we'll be able to have a joint meeting in January to work with the village board on that. We'll know a little bit more on the timing in the next couple of weeks on what that might be. So
Can I ask a question?
go ahead.
So
Yes.
one of the things that I was wondering as we came out of the last meeting was, it was my understanding that it had been determined that a larger library, particularly, I was under the impression the weight of a heavier collection would not work on the Brook Street site, and that had been determined already. Is that true, or is that like not a correct assessment of that initial geotechnical?
So
Go ahead.
what I like to tell everybody is with enough money, you can do anything. And so the thought is we can show what the space is, but there's also the significant cost impact, which Jennifer is sharing, the soil and stability issues. So it means having, thicker spread footings. It means taking out more soil. It means putting, driving piles. There's a lot more to it. Is it impossible? No, with the right amount of money.
And so really, we're just going to need to show how much money the Brook Street site would require, given a larger collection and any combination of the. Great, I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure I had the right information and was not working from I couldn't even verify my own impressions.
Yeah, so this is the simplest statement of summarizing it. The Civic Campus Plan, page 49 of the Civic Campus Plan, states it pretty simply, but there's a very long document that does the actual geotechnical analysis of the soils and goes into a lot more depth for our professionals. But this is kind of the simplest summary of it I've found, and that relates to any building, not just a library building. So it would apply to senior center and whatever else. So that's just gonna be a consideration in the decision-making process. But we'll, like Jenny said, we'll have more information on those costs and what that would entail to make that a viable option as we move forward. So that's a great question, Coral.
Can I ask one now?
Mhm.
I am confused, similarly to Coral. My confusion, in addition to the fact that, as I keep saying, I've been told all along that we'd need to have the building be put on stilts, basically. And I'm concerned about what that would cost. But now looking at this space needs analysis, the library, we're looking at 30-some thousand feet, and the senior center needs 16.5. So you're talking about a building that's more than 50,000 square feet if we put them both on that same lot. And what does our owner's rep tells us we need a 4-acre lot for just our building, and this space is already much less than 4 acres. So
Yeah, so and actually the senior center, this says 16.5, but it doesn't include the gym that they asked for or their drive-through food delivery system that they were discussing as well. So it's probably more like 18,000 square feet that they need. Yes, the answer to that is yes.
Yeah,
But we are going to show what a 50,000 square foot building will look like on the space, right? You end up taking a 16,000 square foot footprint for the library. You take a 18,000 square foot space for the senior center, you put them together, you put a second floor on the library, and you've taken up the entire space. And we have to explain how parking is important and how drive-throughs are important and how having having people that don't know which entrance to use, right? Helping people understand these things. So we are going to show a space plan of what it would be. Essentially, you're kind of almost looking at a 4-story building and, maybe some parking underground that's really, really, really expensive. But we are looking at all of the options, right? We were asked to be creative. So we're looking at how we can do that. And we will have those costs. And that's what we're planning to present at the meeting.
thank you.
Thank you for all the work on this.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that you have to do it.
Jenny,
Yeah.
don't you think the next logical question that will be asked is what about putting the senior center somewhere else and having that area of land be just for the library? I think we have to be prepared to answer that question too.
Yeah, and we talked to Rachel a little bit about that. And if you look at the same Civic campus plan, it talks about the senior center and how important that is to being close to the seniors. The only senior housing is right downtown by where it is. How close, there's the lower income housing that they serve is right there, how it is kind of a center of the community, being close to the post office. So I think that the seniors center staff would also be able to weigh in on the idea of moving that to Main Street, right? To the Main Street site. They actually, their square footage is the same building square footage, essentially what we're trying to put on Main Street, but they want their parking closer than we do. And the ordinances don't really change from a senior center to a library. So I think you're right, Dr. Bergstrom, that's a logical question of what do you do? And we did have that discussion a little bit today. So yeah.
Carlene's raising her hand.
Carlene.
Yeah, so I'm also on the Council on Aging, which is kind of interesting to be on both of these at the same time. And you are absolutely correct, Jenny, that they would prefer to stay where they are because of all the reasons that you named. And as I look at this and I think about the things that I've been told in the past and things that I've heard through Jeff Vine and then this information, I think there are a couple of points that I think the community doesn't understand as well as this board does. And for the reason for the library configured as it is. And a couple of them are really, really emphasizing why 2 stories and not 3 stories. For accessibility, for staffing, those kinds of things, because again and again, there's this massive building. Of course, that is out of character with everything else in the village. Is just, that's a whole other issue. But that's one thing. Because I get a lot of those, like, why can't you build it with these other things and it'd be bigger? Yeah, sure, but so I think that's one thing. That's one thing very much. And then for me, looking at that OPM study, which I was not a part of, but thinking about the things that the village outlined, or people really identified as what they want. I mean, it seems fairly apparent that and I even said this to Leslie on the side, if we had done our work a little faster on that task force on population, maybe we would have been made that space available a little sooner. Dang, that's on us. But I mean, that site, I don't think there would be all the controversy about it had this happened 3 years ago. But I think that there are some things that people in the village who are really going for that Brook Street site don't seem to understand, at least based on all of the emails and phone calls and things that I'm getting.
And Dr. Bergstrom, the other thing that we talked about a little bit at our meeting today was the Civic Campus Plan talks about it as well, as the ability of the senior center to do more of a public-private team up, which allows that private developer to potentially, put housing, senior housing, put those type of things, but it allows them to have the revenue to be able to help remediate those soils, to be able to do some of the things that a civic building can't do. And that's kind of always, the plan that they'd had is, hopefully having some of that team up. So that would be another reason to keep the library, or move the library, but keep the senior center where it is.
So there are excellent answers to almost every question that's asked. It's just getting that information out to all of the people who are currently interested in it. And also what you just said fits with the research about what makes a downtown vital, right? Which is really housing, more so than other pieces. That's connected to vitality in smaller towns. So that's another piece that maybe could be explored, is what makes a downtown vital according to the research that's been done.
Thank you. Yeah, Laura.
I'm sorry to kind of take this in a little bit of a different direction, but I just have some questions. First, I want to say that I was a little disappointed and insulted that we're not providing truthful information. So I'm kind of curious, how might we go about researching this information in a different way to provide this same information, but in a different way that is deemed more truthful, even though I know we're being truthful. I just want to be cognizant of the way some people are interpreting our information. So is there a different way I could be helpful to try to capture some of this information?
Just to be clear, Laura, you are stating that we were told at the village board meeting that what we were presenting was not truthful, or that we should present truth instead. And
Correct.
You are not suggesting that we were actually in any way untruthful, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll interpret that comment. There was a comment made to give honest, that was the word, honest information. And I will say, as a library board member and as a village board member, I believe that everything that has been presented has been honest and truthful and as forthcoming as possible. And that was really not a good word to use.
Yeah, so I think moving forward, we'll just continue to do everything that we can to make sure we're trying to present all the facts in, a matter of fact, unbiased way possible, and just to try to make sure the numbers we have are as accurate as possible. Sometimes we're going to have estimates just because of the level of detail we are at in our projects. We're not going to know some of the exact numbers until we can have a civil engineer do engineering, and we can't possibly do that at all the different sites. So I think as long as we're we have different perspectives, different professionals, we have the owner's rep, we have the architect, we have access to the engineers. So utilizing those multiple expertise to make sure we can check the number from one profession and check it with the other experts and make sure that their numbers are aligning, and just doing everything we can to make sure the numbers and the information we're presenting is as accurate and informed as possible. And I think we'll continue to take that approach.
Thank you, Jennifer, for clarifying that. We'll just continue with our well-researched approach. But please do let me know if there's any way I can be helpful as well.
Yeah, Carrie, go ahead.
Sorry, I have to unmute. I just wanted to add that the other thing that I think is helpful is, again, to rely on the village's own experts. Jeff Rao and Elise Cruz really do know their stuff. And I think we need to just keep reminding the village that, and that the village, was very careful in hiring and choosing both of those people. And, I think they want to listen to their own experts.
Yeah, and I just want to commend the village staff that they've been willing to assist us with whatever we need, whether it be hosting the listening sessions or providing, like Jeff, yesterday spent a lot of his time getting soil borings for us to make sure it was coming from, the village in a really unbiased, neutral fashion. So I appreciate all their willingness to jump in and provide whatever information we need to help get to wherever we need to go. So much appreciation to them for their partnership.
Are there any other questions or clarifications? Jennifer, did you want to show just the sites that we're talking about? I know that was in the packet, just so everybody kind of knows the extent of where we're looking.
So the two sites are the Brook Street site, which encompasses the current library, the current senior center, the post office property, and the current library parking, as well as to get extra acreage would involve Waterman Street. That isn't ideal because there is access to one neighbor that has access off of the street, so that would have to be considered as part of that plan. But those are the properties that were alluded to at Monday's meeting as possibly being available for purchase by the village as well. So that kind of factors into that conversation a little bit. And then the second property is the property on Alpine, which the new village hall is on this bottom corner here. And this location was selected because there's already an existing driveway there. So there's a curb cut and everything already there, which is why that location was focused on, and then also because of the topography. But we're getting soil borings. We're requesting 5 soil borings there, and then 3 soil borings at a more northern location to just make sure we have information as requested by the village board on Monday nights.
Laura, did you have a question?
I do actually, and excuse my naivete on building. Are borings and this geo stuff required before any building goes up on these locations?
Yes.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Jenny.
Oh yeah. You would do them so if you were going to start building, you had already kind of said, hey, I think this is going to be my site. You would do these soil borings there to know where the compaction is, to know if you'll be able, where you can put your footings, where you can do those type of things. They'd be done no matter what.
Okay.
And then just to add on to what Jenny said, we will have to do a second round of borings because once we know whichever site's chosen where the building will actually go. And then along with that, we'll have a geothermal borings that will be needed to do to see if we can do geothermal on whatever site selected as well. So we will have a second round of borings done at whatever site.
Yeah, Laura. Oh, sorry, your hand was still up. Did you have something else?
Yep, I still
Okay.
have a whole list today. I'm
Perfect.
sorry.
Yes.
So I went through our MOU again and realized that since in our MOU we had a specific location addressed in there, that none of this kind of site vetting, for lack of a better term, was included in that. So I'm wondering if we might be able to amend the MOU to include this in there to so I can better understand who's responsible for the vetting of all of these sites.
So I'd be worried that will add months of discussions with the board to amend the MOU. I'd almost rather, we have the soil information for Brook Street. I would rather just do the soil borings for the other site and not spend the time amending the MOU, if that makes sense.
Well, sort of. I mean, it makes sense what you're saying, Jenny. I'm just, we don't have cost estimates for this or any of the renderings for any of these sites. So I'm just trying to make sure that we are using our building fund as responsibly as possible. So I'm just trying to better understand like how much this is going to actually cost and how much that will take away from our actual building. So I'm struggling a little bit with
Yeah.
like, how much upfront money should we take out of the building to do the vetting when it's not our choice where the building goes, I guess.
Yeah, I feel you on that. The estimate for the soil borings is $4,000 to $7,000. And we're trying to get kind of an estimate for OPN on how many hours they think it'll take just for kind of what they're doing now, just to be able to do these kind of block diagrams for us. So all in probably $10,000 to help make this decision. And some of these are things that, other than, you know, some of the OPN hours, we would have done the soil borings on the site. It was already done on the other site. So some of these things that are probably, they're already accounted for in our budget. So they're not necessarily over and above what we would if we start having to do this multiple times, right? They keep telling us that we need more information, we need more drawings, we need actual renderings. We're not planning on bringing renderings. We're planning on block diagrams, which shouldn't take as much time. Then I think we definitely say this is the cost, this is not what we plan to do, and have that conversation. I think what we're doing right now, we have covered in our budget already, Laura.
Okay, but to your point, Jenny, like I'm concerned that we're setting a precedent for a slippery slope here. Like we're saying, yes, we've got the money to cover these sites, but then what happens if these sites don't come back as good sites and then we have to do this all over again? Like I'm nervous and I, you know, and I am somebody that likes to have an agreement in like writing to make sure that both sides are holding up their end of the bargain, I guess.
Okay. I get you on that. Thank you. Carrie, you're next, I think.
Well, I was a couple of things. The idea of the geothermal, I think you mentioned that, Jenny, and I really appreciate that because that was another concern that I had thinking about the Brook Street site. I don't know where or how geothermal could happen there. I agree with Laura, you know, that's why I raised the concern at the meeting about, well, what was this going to cost and who was paying for it? But I also agree with you, Jenny. Having been part of the MOU process originally, I know how long it took, and we don't want to go there again right now. I think, and I bet you, Carlene, this is why you're raising your hand, is that she's going to suggest that once this is done, perhaps we can go back to the board and ask them to chip in on any extra costs here, especially for the stuff that we're doing really just to satisfy a couple of board members and you know, not us.
That makes sense. Yeah, Carlene.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest exactly what Carrie said, and also that to address Laura's concern that we have to weigh how much more the construction costs are going to go up and the time it would take to do a new MOU, and is it going to really cost us more than paying for stuff, and just like let's so that we're in a place where we can move forward.
And
Yeah.
Sorry, I understand what everybody is saying. I'm just, you know, the village has already forked over a lot of money for this project, and don't get me wrong, I really appreciate that. I just don't foresee the board approving additional funds to cover these if we pay for them up front. So thanks.
Can I just mention too, we did have the extra impact fees I was mentioning that will, the revenue would offset those costs a little bit. So also the wetland delineation, the village paid for, and we would only be paying for that if that site is selected. So they've been trying to work in partnership with us, and I think both groups right now are trying to operate that we're working together as partners. and hoping to come to resolution. And then if this does continue becoming a more time consuming or work intensive process, and we do want to have those conversations about how to handle it moving forward. But I'm optimistic that we'll be able to, get the information needed and limit the amount of extra work and time and try to get to a resolution without going too far down that road. There is cost of attorney fees to amend the MOU as well. So, we have to think about at what point does that become valuable versus not. So.
Arlene? Yeah.
Last thing, I would hope too that if we are able to make this work, and I'm optimistic that we can at the Keller Alpine site, that some of those wetland delineation fees or charges or whatever they call that would also be offset by the village, because there are several of us who would like to delineate the rest of that as conservancy.
Yep.
And so that would be something that we would need to do in that kind of a process. And so, I personally don't think that should fall all on the library. I'm really conscious that the longer anything takes, the less money there is for the building and for the things that need to happen around site preparation and everything else, no matter where the library goes. And so if we can reduce costs in that way, I'm all for it.
Thank you, everybody. Are there any more questions about the meeting from Monday, next steps? Anything for that? Okay. Soil borings, we kind of talked about that. Were there any other questions about the soil borings? Okay. Turn up.
If we could just do a motion, I just want to make sure that there's no delay should we need to approve the soil borings from our end. So if you guys would be comfortable to make a motion to approve paying for the soil borings out of our project, that would be helpful so that we don't have to schedule a special meeting should that approval be needed later on. That would be for the soil borings. Go ahead.
I'm happy to make that motion, Jennifer.
Is there a second?
Okay. So I have a question about that motion. Is that we'd be happy to pay for it should that be necessary?
So we were directed by the village board to get those done, and I would, should that be necessary, that we would be able to pay for those out of the library project funds.
Right.
I'm willing to second that. I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Thank you, Laura. Okay. Next is the amendment of the 2022 library budget. Also a fun topic.
So I have a memo kind of explaining our budget process. So overall, our budget was approved generally how we presented it. The main change was the circulation position we added. Instead of a January 1 start date, they budgeted it for a July 1st start date, which just delays the time but does get us the position. And that affects a number of the personnel line items accordingly, because it affects the fringes for that position and the WRS and things like that. So that just affects the number of line items. And then also the public works assistance. Every year we have a line item that budgets for public works help. And typically we really use very limited public works hours, and so we don't ever reach the amount. So they suggested we just update the amount to more accurately reflect what we actually use. Basically, they just charge us for whatever time we spend for their department. That's not for like Jeff's or Lisa's time helping us with our building project or anything like that. It's just like if public works comes and helps us with a flooding issue in the book drop room or something like that, then we do they do track that kind of time. And then health insurance costs when we first did our budget were just estimates. And so those accounts have been adjusted to reflect the actual numbers once they knew what the actual 2022 costs would be. And the items that were changed are highlighted in your packet in yellow. So there's the lines that were adjusted are highlighted in yellow. Those amounts are all slightly different than what we originally budgeted, but again, do meet our goals with those minor changes noted.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, could I have a motion to adopt the amended budget for this? Is that the motion you want, Jennifer?
Yes.
So moved by Goplin.
Is there a second?
Second by Stata.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. A resolution to eliminate library overdue fines.
So as part of the 2022 budget, we were able to decrease our fine and fee revenue to $0, which means we are finally in a position to be able to eliminate late fees for library materials that are checked out at our library.
I wish
So to
Kyle was
do-
here, sorry.
I know.
Kyle would be so excited.
You will be.
Sorry.
So we have a resolution in the packet to approve that, and then a number of subsequent items are policy amendments that just clean up the language to eliminate language about overdue fines, assuming that this resolution passes. Are there any questions about this?
Nope, I think it looks like everyone's nodding that we're good.
So do we just need a motion then to approve this
I was gonna
resolution?
say, I think we need a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved. Congratulations, Jennifer.
Is there a second?
Can I
I'll
second
it.
that? I was gonna say, could I do it on
Everybody
behalf of
second.
Kyle?
Laura, you do it.
Everybody wants to second this one.
I would ask for discussion, but the smiles seem to be like, I think we might be good. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you all. Then we need to amend the library fee schedule.
Which would be basically striking the overdue fine section, just to eliminate the language about overdue materials, since that would no longer apply.
Can I have a motion to amend the fee schedule?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Um,
Opposed? Okay. And then amend the outer library loan policy.
And that is just similar. We're changing just a few items in that policy. The language is on your screen, just indicating that there are no longer overdue charges for those items as well.
Okay, all in favor of updating the outer library loan policy? I need a motion, please.
I'll make that I'll make the motion.
And I'll second.
Second by Laura. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Then motion or amend the circulation policy.
So the circulation policy has that some language about overdue fines, but Alicia also tried to identify a couple places where the language is a little bit of a barrier or seemed really scary, and maybe a little bit unnecessarily so. So she did have a few things she struck from the policy that were just kind of seemed as not necessary to continue to make it more accessible. And then the section about overdue materials is the most substantive change and is here on the screen. Just cleaning up that language to be consistent with eliminating overdue fines as well.
Okay. Can I have a motion to update the circulation policy?
So moved. By
Is there a-
Stata.
Is there a second?
Here.
By Carleen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And then 2022 salary schedule.
And so this is something the village does every year, and they approved theirs on Monday night. So we basically approve amending our salary schedule to give our employees the across the board increase that's agreed upon for the year. For this year, it is 2%. The salary schedule itself is not in the best shape because there's a number of challenges. We were going to update it this year, but since there's a new village administrator, the village board has decided to hire a consultant to do a thorough compensation study in the new year. And rather than trying to update it ourselves and then have it be updated again, we thought it would be best to just participate in that thorough review by professionals that are trained and experts on that topic rather than us. And so for now, my recommendation would be just to approve the salary schedule by adjusting it 2% to reflect the across the board increase. And then I failed to note one exception to that, which is the summer page position, which would start at $12.29. We made that change, which is more than 2%. And that would allow that position to be more comparable to people that work in that position year round. And so basically we would just adjust the schedule for 2%. All our employees would get a 2% increase, and then new library pages working just for the summer position would receive $12.29 per hour in 2022.
Okay, can I have a motion to update the salary schedule as Jennifer has discussed?
I will make that motion.
There a second?
Second by Bergstrom.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Oh, the discussion about resuming in-person meetings in 2022. Anybody have thoughts? Jennifer, I know we had said through the end of December, right, Jennifer, before?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Where would we meet in person? Would we have to kick somebody out of their office space?
That's a
No,
very good question.
so for January, the village hall is available. Last fall, they were not available on Wednesdays, but we could inquire at the senior center where we hosted our special meeting last week. That space actually worked pretty well. And OC Media is able to stream from there if they so wish. So we could pursue that as an option. So we could try to use either space if they were available. So those would be the two choices I would pursue. We can continue to Zoom. I promise I'll be more careful with the link next month. So.
Does anyone have a thought or preference?
So I will say that I prefer Zoom, but that I will make it no matter what happens. Personally, I'm still being extremely cautious. I still have small kids, and my priority is staying healthy so my kids stay in school. But I will make it no matter where we go.
Carlene?
So I came onto the board when we were in COVID and doing everything by Zoom. So my question pertains to before COVID. Were there more other people, community members who attended the meetings when they were in person? That would be the first question. And then, no, so I'm seeing people shake their heads no. And so that, and then, you know, I'm like Coral that it's certainly a lot easier for me. And my husband just had open heart surgery. I'm for at least another month, I am really limiting where I go. So the village board meetings are really a stretch for me to be around that many other people who are not in my pod for that long a time. So I would prefer, you know, again, it's my own personal reasons, but I'd prefer to stay in Zoom if there weren't other people coming when it was in person.
And Carrie?
If we do it,
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I was just going to say, if we can do it for a little longer, at some point, if we choose to continue it on more than another interim basis, we'll need to look at our bylaws to make sure our bylaws appropriately address that. But I think given the circumstances, we can choose to extend Zoom for a little bit longer and still be okay.
And that's kind of what I was gonna say. I was all set to go back to in-person meetings till the latest variant came out. I'm not gonna be here for the January meeting, so whatever you guys decide is up to you. But I think in January, we'll have more information about this latest variant, and then, can look at it again. I'm just afraid we have to keep looking at it month by month and see what the circumstances are.
I think that makes sense. So what I'm hearing is we would like to meet in January via Zoom. There's still going to be the mask mandate going on. There's still going to be some things. So how about we say we'll have our January meeting via Zoom, and we'll just talk about it again as things kind of progress. Does that make sense? Okay, Jennifer, do you need that in a motion, or can we just say that?
I think that's fine for now.
Okay. So that's the last item for that. Closing and future agendas. We have joint meeting with the village board. That's to be determined. We're hoping January. The next meeting for us will be January 12th and via Zoom. And then is there a request for any future agenda items anybody would like to discuss? Okay, if you think of anything, let us know. And then I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Awesome. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you guys so much. Have a great night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Right.